The 20 cafeteria classics we're about to explore did more than fill our stomachs. They created a shared experience across generations. Number 1. Square pizza. Remember that first glimpse of Pizza Day on the monthly menu? Nothing triggered more cafeteria excitement than spotting those rectangular beauties making their way down the lunch line. Unlike the round pizzas from your local pizzeria, these geometric wonders were a breed apart, defying everything we knew about traditional pizza shapes. What made cafeteria pizza so uniquely satisfying? It wasn't just the shape, those perfect rectangles cut with precision into squares that fit perfectly on our compartmentalized trays. The magic was in those slightly burnt, crispy edges that created the perfect contrast to the pillowy, soft middle. And that sauce, sweeter than any commercial version, with a distinctive tang that no chain pizza place has ever managed to duplicate. Let's not forget about the cheese, that signature blanket of orange-yellow dairy product that stretched with impressive elasticity without ever fully breaking. And those pepperoni discs, somehow they remained perfectly positioned, as if magnetically attached to the cheese below, never sliding off even when you picked up your slice. Number 2. Sloppy Joes. After the precision required for Pizza Day, enter the cafeteria chaos that was Sloppy Joe Day. The sheer anticipation built as you watch that lunch lady scoop steaming seasoned beef onto those suspiciously soft buns, a sandwich that rose to popularity in American school cafeterias during the 1960s and 70s, largely because schools could easily prepare large quantities at once. No sandwich ever lived up to its name quite so literally. That first bite inevitably sent a cascade of meat tumbling onto your tray, no matter how carefully you planned your approach. The sweet, tangy sauce had a distinctive flavor profile that emerged from the USDA guidelines of the era, which encouraged hearty, filling meals for growing students. School cafeterias developed their own recipe, usually ground beef simmered with tomato sauce and a special blend of spices that created something entirely different from what your mom made using manwich at home. Regional variations existed across American schools. Some cafeterias incorporated bell peppers or onions into their mixture, while others kept it simple with just meat and that signature sauce. The preparation method was practical yet effective, browning massive quantities of ground beef, then mixing it with sauce until heated through, creating the perfect assembly line service that cafeterias needed. Number 3. Tater tots. If Sloppy Joes tested our eating skills, tater tots were the food that revealed our true character. These golden potato cylinders somehow bridged social divides in the lunchroom, bringing together kids from every clique over their mysteriously perfect texture. What made cafeteria tater tots so magical? Created back in 1953 by Ore-Ita's founders as a clever way to use leftover potato scraps from French fry production, these humble nuggets found their true calling in school cafeterias of the 1960s. Unlike their uniform grocery store cousins, cafeteria tots had personalities all their own, varying slightly in size and crispness, which only added to their charm. The physics-defying properties of cafeteria tater tots still baffle us today. How did they maintain that perfect crispy exterior while sitting in steam trays for hours? The outside shell stayed crunchy, while the inside remained fluffy and piping hot, a culinary achievement modern chefs still struggle to replicate. Number 4. Tuna salad on a roll. While tater tots unified the lunchroom, tuna salad sandwiches created an immediate divide. The moment that distinctive fishy aroma wafted through the cafeteria, students sorted themselves into two opposing camps with absolutely no middle ground, devoted fans or passionate avoiders. These sandwiches followed a specific USDA formula, unlike anything you'd make at home. The cafeteria version contained the standard canned tuna, mayonnaise, and celery, but somehow achieved that institutional consistency that was simultaneously too dry and too moist. What really set these sandwiches apart were those mysteriously soft rolls that defied physics by remaining perfectly tender despite hours in warming trays. Tuna Day wasn't just about the food, it was about identity. Those who chose the tuna sandwich carried the distinctive scent with them like a badge for the rest of the day. You could track a tuna eater's path through the school hallways by following the aroma that clung to their clothes and breath. Number 5. Salisbury steak with gravy. Speaking of federal guidelines, no food embodied institutional cooking quite like the infamous Salisbury steak. That suspiciously uniform patty bathed in glossy brown gravy wasn't just another mystery meat. It was actually a 19th century health food that somehow transformed into the poster child for cafeteria cuisine. Originating from Dr. James H. Salisbury's diet recommendations, this minced beef creation was initially promoted as a remedy for digestive problems. By the mid-20th century, it had found its perfect home in school lunchrooms across America, typically served alongside mashed potatoes as a hearty, comforting meal that satisfied both growing appetites and USDA protein requirements. The cafeteria version featured ground beef mixed with breadcrumbs, onions, and seasonings, formed into those distinctive oval patties that became instantly recognizable to generations of students. What made this dish special was its mass production method. Large batches cooked and kept warm in steam trays, allowing the patties to maintain their moisture and develop that signature texture we all remember. Number 6. Chili with cinnamon rolls. While Salisbury steak played it safe in the flavor department, another cafeteria combination ventured into truly bizarre territory. If you didn't grow up in Nebraska or Iowa between the 1960s and 1990s, you'd probably think we're making this up. But chili served with cinnamon rolls wasn't just real, it was passionately beloved by generations of Midwestern kids. Who first dreamed up this culinary odd couple? The origins remain murky, but by the early 20th century, this pairing had become firmly entrenched in school cafeterias across the region. What made it work was the specific cafeteria approach to both components. The chili wasn't your five-alarm variety. It was a deliberately mild, bean-heavy version with a subtle sweetness that created an unexpected harmony with its dessert companion. And those cinnamon rolls. These weren't the sad, prepackaged variety. Cafeteria cinnamon rolls were epic creations. Fluffy spirals of sweet dough layered with cinnamon and brown sugar, crowned with a thick blanket of white icing that somehow stayed perfectly gooey despite sitting in warming trays. The contrast between the warm, slightly spicy chili and the sweet, soft cinnamon roll created a flavor experience that sounds completely wrong but tasted undeniably right. Number 7. Hot dogs. From one cafeteria contradiction to another, while Midwestern kids eagerly anticipated their sweet and savory chili day, there was another menu item that united school children across the entire nation. Those distinctive pink cylinders in suspiciously soft buns weren't just hot dogs, they were scientific anomalies that somehow maintained their snap despite hours in steam trays. Hot dogs became a cafeteria staple during the mid-20th century, gaining serious traction in the 1960s as schools searched for affordable, easy-to-prepare protein sources. The USDA even endorsed these tubular treats in their nutritional guidelines, cementing their place in American school lunch history. What made these dogs so memorable wasn't their gourmet quality, but their peculiar physics-defying properties. Unlike the backyard variety, cafeteria dogs maintained that distinctive reddish-pink exterior and snappy casing even after sitting for hours in hot trays. The interior had an unmistakable springy bounce that no home-cooked hot dog has ever replicated. The strategic challenge came with the bun situation. Those soft white rolls compressed dramatically with each bite, creating a structural dilemma. Veteran students developed specialized techniques to prevent the inevitable hot dog slide, rotating the sandwich with mathematical precision to maintain structural integrity. Number 8. Fried chicken. Unlike hot dogs with their quirky cooking paradox, another cafeteria legend prompted strategic planning of an entirely different sort, plotting to be first in line on Fried Chicken Day. Ever noticed how attendance mysteriously spiked when this golden delicacy appeared on the monthly menu? Even the most dedicated brown baggers would abandon their homemade meals for a taste of this crispy perfection. What made school cafeteria fried chicken from the 60s through 90s so magical? It wasn't fancy or pretentious. It was comfort food that somehow transcended its institutional origins. The cooking staff followed those trusty USDA guidelines for protein-rich meals, but managed to transform basic ingredients into something extraordinary. Regional variations existed across America's schools, with cafeterias developing their own signature seasoning blends that reflected local tastes. That coating deserves special recognition. Perfectly proportioned and somehow staying completely intact with each bite, never flaking off like today's fast food versions. Number 9. Meatloaf. If fried chicken was the cafeteria's crown jewel, then meatloaf was its unsung hero. A humble slice of mystery meat that somehow appeared on lunch trays month after month, decade after decade. That perfectly uniform slice looked like it had been cut from a loaf extending to infinity, always topped with that strange tomato-based sauce that defied the laws of physics. The recipe itself was a marvel of institutional cooking, a blend of ground beef, breadcrumbs, eggs, and just enough seasoning to make it identifiable as meatloaf without offending even the pickiest eaters. What made it special was the surprise appearance of green pepper and onion bits that added unexpected texture to each bite. These weren't random additions, but carefully calculated inclusions following USDA nutritional guidelines of the era. Number 10. Macaroni and cheese. Speaking of cafeteria food mysteries, nothing compared to the structural integrity of school macaroni and cheese. Did you know students would actually fight for position in the lunch line based on advanced mac and cheese strategy? The prize? Those darkened, slightly chewy corner pieces with maximum surface area. A texture experience that home cooking never quite managed to duplicate. Unlike the runny, creamy version most of us knew from home, cafeteria mac and cheese existed as an architectural marvel. Served with an ice cream scoop that left perfect half-dome portions standing at attention on lunch trays, this pasta defied the laws of physics. The secret lay in the precise cooking method that left the pasta at the perfect al dente stage, firm enough to withstand hours of steam table heat without turning to mush. Number 11. French bread pizzas. Just when the cafeteria hierarchy established by macaroni and cheese was firmly in place, the 1980s rolled in with a European-inspired revolution that would change school lunches forever. French bread pizza burst onto the scene with an air of sophistication that made traditional square pizza seem positively outdated. What made these crusty bread boats so special? For starters, they eliminated the battle for coveted corner pieces entirely. Every serving was equally desirable, creating lunchroom equality we never knew we needed. The texture was fascinatingly contradictory, crispy at the edges while delightfully soggy in the middle where the sauce had worked its magic. Number 12. Creamed chipped beef on toast, SOS. After all that fancy French bread pizza, cafeteria menus took a sharp turn into much humbler territory with a dish that instantly revealed which kids had military veterans at home. If you heard someone call it SOS instead of creamed chipped beef, you knew exactly what those letters stood for, and it wasn't Save Our Ship. This military mess hall staple found its way into school cafeterias during the 1950s and 60s as schools looked for economical ways to feed the booming baby boomer population. The transformation from battlefield to lunchroom was surprisingly seamless. After all, both institutions specialized in feeding large groups quickly and affordably. Number 13. Chicken nuggets. While the dreaded creamed chipped beef divided the cafeteria crowd, a protein revolution was underway in the 1980s that would unite kids in unprecedented mealtime harmony. Chicken nuggets burst onto lunch trays as a cafeteria game-changer that solved multiple problems at once. These golden breaded treasures allowed cafeteria staff to quickly serve protein that actually appealed to picky eaters while meeting those ever-present USDA guidelines. What made nuggets truly revolutionary wasn't just their kid-friendly taste, it was the sacred ritual of personalized dipping they introduced to institutional dining. For the first time, school lunch became interactive. Those little paper cups of ketchup and barbecue sauce transformed a simple protein into a customizable experience where students could express their preferences. Number 14. Apple Crisp. From the world of structured nutrition came a brilliant culinary sleight of hand that convinced an entire generation of school administrators that dessert could qualify as a fruit serving. While chicken nuggets gave us control over our dipping destiny, Apple Crisp granted us the joy of eating what felt like dessert while technically fulfilling dietary requirements. Those perfect squares of warmth nestled on your tray weren't there by accident. The genius was in the execution. Chunks of apples that somehow maintained their distinct shape and texture beneath a blanket of cinnamon-infused sweetness. Unlike the mushy canned fruit cocktail that occasionally appeared, Apple Crisp delivered real fruit in a form kids actually wanted to eat. Number 15. Potato salad. If Apple Crisp was the diplomacy of school lunches, potato salad was its Cold War, a seemingly simple side dish that revealed deep cultural divides. That innocent scoop of mayonnaise-coated potatoes sitting beside your sandwich wasn't just food, it was a culinary Rorschach test that exposed your geographic roots and family traditions faster than any accent ever could. The cafeteria version represented a careful middle ground in the potato salad wars. Prepared in massive batches, these industrial-sized bowls contained perfectly uniform potato cubes swimming in a mayonnaise mixture that carried hints of mustard and vinegar. The texture was the real miracle. Not too soft, nobody wanted potato mush, but not too firm. This wasn't a raw vegetable platter. Number 16. Pudding cups. Did you know that cafeteria pudding cups were secretly dividing students into opposing camps long before teenage cliques formed? That innocent-looking dessert created a surprisingly controversial decision. Do you peel off and savor the skin that formed on top, or mix it right in with the rest? Your choice revealed more about your personality than any yearbook quote ever could. While prepackaged pudding cups became a cafeteria staple during the 70s and 80s, they weren't just any dessert. They were mini science experiments sitting at the edge of your lunch tray. Brands like Jell-O and Snack Pack delivered these mysterious substances in perfect portion-controlled containers, revolutionizing how schools served desserts compared to the messy bowls of the past. The flavor rotation kept things interesting but predictable. Chocolate reigned supreme as the undisputed champion, vanilla maintained a strong following among purists, and butterscotch made its occasional appearance as the dark horse favorite. Each flavor developed its own dedicated fan base, with fierce debates about which deserved trading priority in lunchroom negotiations. Number 17. Beef burritos. While pudding cups introduced us to food physics, another cafeteria marvel was quietly revolutionizing our cultural education, wrapped in shiny foil and radiating heat. Ever wondered how an entire generation of American kids first encountered Mexican food without ever tasting anything remotely authentic? The cafeteria burrito was pulling off a culinary magic trick that would make actual Mexican chefs shake their heads in disbelief. These Tex-Mex creations began appearing in school lunchrooms during the 1970s and 80s, riding the wave of growing popularity for Mexican-inspired cuisine in American culture. The filling was a uniquely institutional interpretation, ground beef swimming in a mild, slightly sweet tomato-based sauce, occasionally punctuated with beans or rice that added both texture and nutritional value to meet those all-important USDA guidelines. Number 18. Banana cream pie. While Mexican-inspired burritos introduced us to cafeteria versions of ethnic cuisine, banana cream pie achieved something entirely different, elevating institutional dining to unexpected heights. Among the plastic trays and milk cartons, this dessert looked almost out of place with its perfect wedge of pale yellow filling and cloud-like whipped topping. What cafeteria magic allowed this dessert to maintain its perfect structure from serving line to your tray? The crust struck that impossible balance between crisp edges and tender base, despite spending hours in industrial coolers. More impressive was the filling, a smooth, vanilla-forward custard that somehow suspended actual banana slices throughout without them turning brown or mushy. Number 19. Fish sticks. Forget the whipped topping that defied science. There was another cafeteria marvel that taught us about both flavor and faith. Those Friday fish sticks, appearing with clock-like regularity on cafeteria trays across America, carried a cultural significance that no other menu item could match. The 1960s and 70s saw these golden rectangles become permanent fixtures, particularly in Catholic schools where abstaining from meat on Fridays was tradition. Brands like Gorton's and Mrs. Paul's dominated the scene, delivering that consistent experience we all remember: mild white fish encased in a coating that somehow maintained its crispness despite the steam table's best efforts to soften it. Number 20. Chicken patty sandwiches. Did you know that chicken patty sandwiches weren't just random menu items but actually a calculated strategic move by school cafeterias? As fast food giants captured the hearts of American students in the 1980s, schools fought back with their own version of the chicken sandwich and created an accidental cult classic that many of us still compare every Chick-fil-A sandwich to. These circular marvels of food engineering were designed specifically to maintain their shape and texture despite hours in steam trays. The breaded exterior somehow stayed crispy, while the interior remained mysteriously juicy. Unlike their fast food counterparts, these uniform patties contained processed poultry that had been carefully formulated to appeal to young palates while meeting USDA nutritional standards.